Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
So help me God. Don't you love it? Thank you for joining me on Contemplating the Constitution. I'm Mark David Smith. Last week, we talked about Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7, which states no money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and Clause 7b, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. This is called the Appropriations Clause and the Statement and Accounts Clause. You can find the archive of this broadcast along with all the other broadcasts we've done at www.messianiclamnetwork.com. This week, I give you research on Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of the Congress, except of any present annulment, emolument, I cannot say that word, emolument, office or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or state, foreign state. I'm sorry about stumbling over that. It's funny. I've been searching this all week long, and I've said this word before, but when I come to it, it's so hard to pronounce. But basically, it's called the Foreign Emolument Clause. I'm sure I'm probably even pronouncing that wrong. Or the Gifts Clause, Foreign Gifts Clause, and Foreign Titles Clause. Emolument definition is a salary, fee, or profit from employment or office. Basically, this clause states that rejecting the monarchy of England, the Constitution also specifically prohibits Congress from granting a title of nobility to any person and prohibits public officials from accepting a title of nobility, office, or gift from any foreign country or monarch without congressional approval. Now, the original Constitution, or Confederate Constitution before the 1787 Constitution, had the same thing, only it worded a little bit different. And I'm going to give you a little background on this because it's really important to understand the times, the 1787, when they were going all over all this and putting this together. It's real important to understand what this was all about. And for this clause, my research is from Interactive Constitution at constitutioncenter.org, an article written by Zephyr Teachout and Seth Barrett Tillman will be my base outline. Between the 14th and 18th centuries, it was routine diplomatic practice for the royalty of a host country to give expensive gifts to departing foreign emissaries or diplomats at the end of their tenure in the host country. However, in the mid-17th century, remember our Constitution is written in 1787, in the mid-17th century, the Dutch enacted a rule forbidding their foreign ministers from taking any presents directly or indirectly in any manner or way whatever. This was motivated by a fear of corruption. This new rule was alien to customary international relations, and it was strongly criticized by Abraham de Wickevoort, one of the more well-known Dutch political writers. Wickevoort wrote, and I quote, The custom of making a present is so well established that it is as great an extent as the law of nations itself. There is reason to be surprised at the regulation that has been made on that subject in Holland, end quote. The new Americans were interested in Wickfort's principles, even if they violated the sensibilities of kings or autocratic monarchs. The Articles of Confederation, which was America's first original national constitution, not the actual constitution we go by today, included a provision in Article 6 stating, "Nor shall any person holding any office of profit or trust under the United States, or any of them, except any present emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state." This clause proved problematic in practice. Foreign powers gifted their departing American emissaries with the same kinds of gifts they had customarily given other diplomats. And the new Americans had to figure out how to square their American ban with the standard international practice. American diplomats squirmed under two conflicting desires. On the one hand, the desire to please their foreign host by accepting their gifts, and on the other, the desire to stay true to the new Constitution. When the King of France gave Benjamin Franklin a very expensive diamond-encrusted snuff box, there were some public murmurings, but the Articles of Congress ultimately permitted Franklin to keep the gift. When the Constitution of 1787, the one we use today, was debated and drafted by the Philadelphia Convention, early drafts had no provision akin to the Articles of Confederation's foreign emoluments clause. However, towards the end of the Constitution Convention, on August 23rd, 1787, Charles Pinckney urged the necessity of preserving foreign ministers and other officers of the U.S. independent or external influence, and he moved to insert a provision closely tracking the language in the Articles. Ultimately, Pinckney's provision became Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8, the one that we're talking about today. However, at the Virginia Ratifying Convention, Governor Edmund Randolph explained, and I quote, "This restriction was provided to prevent corruption. An accident which actually happened operated in producing the restriction. A box was presented to our ambassador by the king of our allies. It was thought proper, in order to exclude corruption and foreign influence, to prohibit anyone in office from receiving or holding any emoluments from foreign states," end quote. The foreign emoluments clause text that's in the Constitution we use today departed from the Confederation era predecessor in two distinct ways. First, the modern foreign emolument clause, like its predecessor, expressly permitted officers under the United States to accept gifts from foreign governments if those officers had the consent of Congress. Some believe that this subclause introduced a substantive change, but others believe that it is merely codified to prior practice of the Articles of Congress. The Articles of Confederation provision applied both to offices of profit or trust under the United States and also to offices of profit or trust under any state, whereas the Constitution's foreign emolument clause only applies to offices or profit or trust under the United States. You have to understand the difference is it's not that much, but it makes a world of difference. The prevailing view is that the modern foreign emolument clause, unlike its article's predecessor, does not reach state positions. Some would argue that the modern foreign emoluments clause has a somewhat more limited scope than its Confederation era predecessor. American ambassadors stationed abroad are prohibited from accepting gifts from foreign governments and their officials. The purpose is to prevent such diplomats from being bribed by foreign lucre and corrupted by other foreign gifts, and also to ensure that their loyalties remained undivided. In other words, running exclusively to the United States, its government, and its people. Substantial early American materials from the ratification area strongly support this view. Our text of the Constitution's foreign emoluments clause is not limited to American ambassadors or even to American diplomatic personnel. Our Constitution's foreign emoluments clause applies to offices of profit or trust under the United States, a substantially wider category. It is undisputed that this category applies to all officials holding appointed positions in the judicial and executive branches of the national government. What about the legislative branch? In 1792, the Senate asked Secretary of the Treasury Alexander Hamilton to compile a list of all persons holding offices under the United States and their salaries. Hamilton's 1793 response, including non-elected officials in each branch, including the legislative branch. The question whether the Constitution's foreign emoluments clause reaches any or all federal elected positions, in other words, representatives, senators, vice president, president, and president-elector, proposes a different interpretive challenge. For example, Hamilton's list did not include members of Congress or any other elected state or federal positions. Likewise, George Washington, while president, accepted and kept 2 diplomatic gifts, but he never asked for or received congressional consent. However, subsequent presidents, such as Andrew Jackson, in similar circumstances, sought congressional consent. Whose practice should we rely on? It works both ways. The clause is important in its own right, but also for what it might signify about the framers of the Constitution and how they thought about corruption. The clause is a solid example and strong evidence of the radicalism of the original framers' anti-corruption commitment, a commitment that constitutionalized an anti-corruption rule, which flew directly in the face of international convention and made diplomacy more difficult for the new republic's officials. This anti-corruption centered understanding of the clause and of the original framers of the Constitution's worldview might inform our understanding of other constitutional provisions and of the Constitution's global structure. But the validity of such interpretations, which rely in part on the original framers' intentions rather than specific constitutional text, is highly controversial. Bottom line, this clause specifically talks about elected officials accepting physical emolument gifts, which is basically considered profiting from holding office. So, getting gifts from foreign nationals and then could be construed as the recipient giving favor to the gift giver. But what about the bribes brought forth by dangling an advancement or endorsements in front of the recipients instead of the actual gifted objects? Personally, I see no difference. This past week, we all heard of the impeachment proceedings, supported by a massive amount of people who stood behind the man being impeached. Is there ever any doubt that so many were enticed and or gifted to sway their opinion or vote? Remember, the world is changing. If we play by the old rules, we're going to lose the new battles. Mark my word. Again, my research came from, and I would like to thank Interactive Constitution at constitutioncenter.org, an article written by Zephyr Teachout and Seth Barrett Tillman. Next week, I'll give my research on Article 1, Section 10. We're done with Section 9 now. The text, for Article 1, Section 10 is no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. No state shall, without the consent of the Congress, lay any imposts or duties on imports or exports, except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws, and the net produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state on imports or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revision and control of the Congress. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter any agreement or compact with any other state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. That's next week's Contemplating the Constitution. That's what I'll be discussing, along with whatever new article that I come up with for our Constitution in the news. I'm Mark David Smith, and I just shared my research for Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8 on the Lamb Network original show, Contemplating the Constitution. Thank you all, and have a great week.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
Constitution.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.